to another podcast. Today we have a special guest. She will be telling us her story of how was her journey with having a father who lost his battle due to cancer. So you'd like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Meza. Um, I am actually Brisa's sister-in-law. um, uh, we lost our father 2 years ago now to cancer. He had melanoma that had metastasized to his lymph nodes and other parts of his body, but mainly it had stayed to his lymph nodes. And melanoma is basically a skin cancer, and when it spreads to your lymph nodes, that's when you have like the lymph nodes, I guess, is like the trash can of your body, and when that's where it stayed for him, and it was unable. He was on constant treatment for it, and that's where it kind of stayed. And he was on treatment for, I guess I want to say like 11 years maybe. And that was to keep that part of his the cancer under control.
All right, so let's start.
Okay.
Can you take us back to the moment you first heard that your dad was diagnosed with cancer?
When he first found out, it was at the end, like in November, December of 2012. And he found out first. He found out first via phone call. Actually, at that time we were in a retreat, a leadership program retreat, and so like that leadership program, it really changed well, the people that did the leadership program was myself, my mom, and my dad. I started out first, and then I got my dad to go, and then my mom to go. And it just kind of like, I think at that point in our lives, before we even found out he had cancer, we were kind of like in a rut, and this leadership program kind of like moved us from a different like space of mindset, and really helped us with whatever like issues or things that we were feeling in that moment, that I can't even honestly tell you what it was that we were feeling, because that was even before we found out about his cancer. Then it was like around December, like the first week in December, that he found out, like he had gone to the doctor because my mom had seen that he had a mole on his back, that she had seen it, noticed it when it first started changing. Because my dad was very light skinned, and like any moles on a light skinned person, you could really tell the difference. So um she noticed that it changed to a darker color than the normal brown. She told him, hey, go to the doctor. He went. That doctor at that time told him, oh, it's all fine, that you're fine. Then my dad like didn't think nothing of it, and then life happens, and 5 years later, my mom's like, no, it's grown bigger, and it's like raised, like you need to go to the doctor again. So that's when my dad went to the doctor, not because he was feeling any type of symptoms or anything. And that's when they called him and they told him like that he had cancer. And because he was going through that leadership program, he took it differently. And I feel like because we were going through that, at least for myself, I can't speak for my brothers, but because we were going through that leadership program, I don't think that um I think we took it, we're like, I guess we went off what my dad was feeling. And honestly, they didn't really tell us like the whole, like, oh, like it's stage 3 or stage 4 or anything like that. They're just like, your dad has cancer, he's gonna start treatment, the small blah blah blah. So it was like very the basics. Yeah, they really like, because honestly, we didn't find out more about how aggressive his melanoma was until later. And I honestly attribute to being in that leadership program to how we all like, at least me and my mom and my dad handled his cancer diagnosis. Like my brothers went the medicinal route, like, okay, like finding alternatives to help him when he was like, because he started getting chemo, but it wasn't even chemo like at the hospital at that time. It was an injection that my mom would give him, and that would bring him down a little bit. But then my mom found this multivitamin drink that really helped him, like totally uplifted his immune system, because chemotherapy like brings your immune system down. And this multivitamin like drink really like totally like would help him. Like he would hardly have any cancer symptoms and stuff like that, which was really good for him. And I think, see, like at first seeing him, yes, when he was kind of like not feeling good, laying down, and that wasn't my dad. That was kind of like scary. But my dad never lost his hair. He never. So I
He
feel like
never looked like
he
the
never looked like a traditional cancer
cancer.
pick,
Yeah.
and I feel like again I attribute it to the leadership program because his mental state was like, oh no, I got this. I'm gonna beat this. They're
Oh,
I don't believe in what they're telling me or whatever. And at that time we didn't know either, so that
okay.
was kind of how
So he
that.
was very brave with the reaction.
Yeah, he
He didn't
was.
let him like take him down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because my mom even told me that she didn't know. Like we had gone to that thing, and they had such a connection that she had like she's like, okay, like what's like he's quiet. Like I mean, he wasn't like he was happy and he was in a good mood, but he was like, there's something. I feel like there's something. And he's
Yeah.
like, he's like, she's like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, like let's go to lunch tomorrow. And she's like, okay. And that's when he, I guess, told her, I don't really. That's the basis of what I know.
Yeah.
And then they told us as a family together, me and my brothers. And we were all living together at the time, so we were all around each other, so we all knew. But like, again, like, because my dad was very like almost like nonchalant, like, oh, I have this, but it's fine. Like, I'm getting treatment,
It wasn't
everything's.
scary for you guys.
In that moment, no, it wasn't. Like, it wasn't like, oh shoot, like it's. I mean, like, yes, like it was like, oh
Yeah.
shit, it's cancer. Like, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
But and then my mom and I went the holistic route. So like my brothers went the medicinal marijuana for him so he could eat and stuff because he did lose. That's the only thing, like he would lose appetite and couldn't sleep really well,
Okay.
and that really helped him. And then me and my mom went the holistic route of like how to eat better, how to like emotionally, because cancer, like what we've learned, cancer is not just because you have cancer, it's tied to an emotion of our body, stuff like that. And it's been a journey,
Yeah.
to say the least.
So you kind of like answer a lot of my
Oh,
questions, but
sorry.
that's fine. So obviously you mentioned a little bit how your life changed completely after, obviously you mentioned you guys try to look at meal changing,
Mhm.
the your food diet, I
Mhm.
think changed for everyone in the household.
Yeah.
And then other like basic things changed. What were your biggest fears during like the beginning? I know you mentioned you didn't have like you guys weren't that much worried because he seemed like, oh, it's gonna be a very easy survivor kind of. He was giving
Mhm.
out maybe that reaction where it wasn't gonna be that difficult. But were there ever moments where like you saw everyone strong, but you yourself didn't feel that strong?
Well, like so he had his cancer diagnosis in 2012, and then he had his surgery in 2013, and then he was going through his treatments, and then he was fine. Like everything, like he was getting treatments and everything like that. But in our mind, he's fine. Like he did everything. He was never down. Like in the beginning, he was down, but like after he started taking that multivitamin drink and eating a little bit better, he like my dad was very disciplined in the sense of like he could stop things cold turkey, and like he was like super disciplined. If you told him he had to take a pill at like 2:32, he would take it. You know what I mean? Like it was just like, and he was on the
So
dot.
it was
Like yeah, he was very responsible and stuff when it came to all his medical procedures and everything. So I think what threw me for a loop was in 2017. It was like around almost 4th of July because I remember looking at the hospital. Like I got a call. My mom had lost her cell phone, and I got a call from my dad. It wasn't even my dad's phone. It was like another number, and I just answered it, which I normally don't answer random numbers. But I answered it. My mom and we had my mom had came to pick up my car. My dad and I kind of worked close to each other. And my mom had come to pick up my car. Um, did she? Yeah. Well, the thing is that she picked up my car or went to go switch cars with my dad, but she picked up my car and my dad was driving the expedition, so they switched, or vice versa, something like that. So they switched, and he needed to have this other vehicle, and my mom was running late, which thank God she was running late that time. And then so she got there, and so he got there like a little, so he left later than when he was expected to leave because they had a family party the next day where he was going to get stuff for that party. His friend's like 25th wedding anniversary. While he was at work, he had a seizure, and like they had to, and like he passed out, and like he was at work with still with his coworkers like right at the end. Like if he would have gone, he would have had the seizure driving, on the 99, which is scary.
Yeah.
And then so they're the ones that called the ambulance. And they took him to St. Agnes, and that's when he called me. He's like, and he didn't even call me from his phone. He called me from the hospital, and I'm like, and he's like, hey, I I'm in the hospital. I'm like, what? And he called me because my mom's phone, like I said, was lost at that time. I was like, you're at the hospital. And like my mom, we were going to get stuff because she was going to do signs for this thing, right? So we were going to, Office Max. And we were in the parking lot, I remember. And then he calls me. He's like, I'm at the hospital. I was like, what hospital? And then, my mom was driving and I was in the passenger and she's like, what hospital? I was like, what hospital? He's like, St. Agnes. I was like, what happened? He's like, I had, he's like, I passed out at work. Like he didn't like really know what happened, right? I was like, okay. I was like, when my mom was like, let's go. Like we're gonna go, right? And then we went to. I remember we went to the hospital, and then my mom just ended up staying with him, and then I ended up because my car got left at his work because he got taken by ambulance and all his stuff got left there. So and they had been and they didn't even have our numbers, which is funny. That's the thing. They were trying to reach us, but they didn't have our actual. They were trying to call. They were calling my mom, but like I said, she didn't have it. So I was able to get his stuff from work and then get my car and because a coworker like took it to our house. But at that time I remember being like really like worried because I'm like, what the hell? Like that was like my first like crazy hospital moment. I mean, yes, we had been in hospitals before when he was getting when he got the cancer removed from his back, the melanoma, the mole, and then the lymph nodes. He'd had robotic surgery, and that like me and my mom, we spent a lot of time in hospitals because of those surgeries. But I mean, those were always, and his doctors were really, really great doctors. Like he always had the best doctors, which I'm thankful for. Those his surgeons, I guess you could say, right? Because there's difference from oncologists, like your cancer doctors, and your surgeons, right? His surgeons were always amazing. Even his head doctors, like his head neurologist and the head surgeon, they were pretty good. And that was at that time we were like once we're like okay, well we thought like oh maybe he's something happened like I didn't think it was linked to his cancer that he went to the hospital. But then they that's when my mom told him like oh no he has a tumor in his head, and I'm like, and that was like the first moment like crap. And then what my mom did, I didn't find out until much later because it's like my mom and my dad were like a unit and they would like talk about like my dad would make decisions like oh I don't want them to know, I don't want them to worry. My dad was very always protecting us, like he didn't want us to be scared or sad or whatever. So it was just him and my mom that kind of knew what was going on at that time. So I remember that when I found out, like no, it's he has cancer in his brain, and they're gonna have to do surgery. He couldn't leave the hospital anymore. They moved him from St. Agnes to and nobody at his work at that time, and this had been what since he had his surgery 4 years at this point. They didn't know that he had cancer. Because that's what I'm telling you. My dad was like, you wouldn't know, like you would not know, like the way he carried himself, you wouldn't know, and the way he handled himself, like he was a very strong man, and he just was very like positive too, like you so for him, nobody knew until that happened, and then they found out like, oh, he has cancer, and oh, and it's in his brain. So in his work, they loved him. So I remember they got him to get moved to Fresno Community, like the ward up there that was like really like one of the best like areas. Like Fresno Community has one of the best like trauma and all the stuff. Like all the surgeons are the best there at where we're from in Fresno. And that's when we were like they're like oh he has his tumor, they're going to remove it. And because the brain is a very delicate place, and to get like surgery and so that was a moment where I was like oh shoot, you know what I mean, like and I was scared because I didn't know, and then I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if he was going to survive. I didn't know if he was like all these things that go through your head in that moment. And it was just kind of like it just happened all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, he's fine. He's just getting his treatments. Like it's gonna go away.
You're
like
having no reaction to it.
yeah. So I was in that moment. I was fine until that happened, and I was like, it kind of was like a wake up call to me too. And I was like, shoot, like okay, like, and I think that was when we started doing. My mom and I went to this. We started going after he had the surgery, and they didn't know that his cancer. Oh well, they did know. They didn't. I didn't know. They didn't tell us that cancer that he had in his head in his brain was super aggressive. because that he had that tumor that kind of like bled. That's what caused the seizure. And then then 2 weeks later, like they removed it, and then 2 weeks later they were gonna start radiation therapy, and they had another one that he had another one that appeared in the back of his head, which that one was non-operable. So they're like, and they told him like, look, your cancer is super aggressive in the brain. He's like, we're not. He's like, we're hoping that the radiation will what do you call it, like shrink it or stop it from growing. He's like, but we're not even sure. So like my dad was giving a very very low rate percentage rate at that moment.
Yeah. So after like receiving your wake up call, well, how do you feel like your personal life changed? Like, do you feel like you started focusing more on your dad's health and kind of let yourself go? Was there any like changes that you're like you probably didn't notice in that moment, but like now that everything has happened, that you're like, oh, like my life really flipped around.
Yeah, I tell that moment when that happened, they went to Mexico, right? So, because we were always looking for alternatives, not just me and my mom, we weren't so focused on like the medical, American medical system, right? So, they had a family member that took them to, that told them about this, naturopathic doctor in Guadalajara. And he went, and that's when he told them like, hey, you need to go vegan, no sugar, no all that stuff. And then, because he had that seizure, he couldn't drive. So then I started driving him. Me and my mom started driving him everywhere. Yeah. So, and that's where it started. That right there, it wasn't like a conscious, like I can honestly, like my friends, I was involved in a nonprofit, and that day, like the day before or 2 days before, I think the event was like, or it was the event was next week. And then like I was part of the board. I was one of the board members. I was there to help. And that happened, and like they understood I couldn't be a part of it. But like from then on, like I've kind of like, not that I separated myself from my friends, because I still hung out with them and I still did stuff, but they were very understanding that my dad came first. And that I realized that now that I put my life on pause without realizing that I put my life on pause. Like because I didn't think about it as my life being in pause. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was just kind of like, we have to make sure my dad gets
We
healthy.
are back. So, I believe we're left off where your life is in pause, but we'll continue kind of where we were going. So she was sharing a little bit about the fact where she was the moment you realized that his fight was coming to an end, or if you were told, and kind of a little bit about his the moments that it all started where you guys were kind of preparing yourself for the worst case.
Okay. Well, I had when he was stable and everything was fine, I had moved out at the end of like 2020, right? And because his cancer from his brain completely like was in remission, and then he was just steadily he was doing fine. So I moved out in 2020, and I was living apart. So I was kind of like living my life that I had, because I had put my life, like, I guess, on pause, right? And then so my mom's like, no, like your dad's fine, like live your life. So that's kind of how I moved out, and I was living on my own, traveling, living my life. And then he got sick, or he started getting stomach pains, which was random. It wasn't even, because it wasn't his cancer that ultimately took his life, right? It was the secondary effects of the prolonged use of the immunotherapy. For him being on that chemotherapy for 10 years really messed up his body. So it wasn't even the cancer. Like, yeah, the cancer was growing a little bit, but it wasn't affecting everything. What affected his body was the chemotherapy, the long use of the chemotherapy, right? And then, and so in July of 2022, that's when he started getting pains, and he and I were actually doing a class together, right? We were doing this program together, for healing, which in reality at the end he was able to heal um, a trauma from his life, a pain and trauma from his life, from his younger life, which really was the main thing that we wanted to help him and all that stuff. He was able to heal that, so everything was good. Like, but he was still having those problems. They couldn't figure out what was wrong because his stomach was having intense pain. And so in reality, like it wasn't cancer. Well, it was cancer related, but it wasn't like, oh, like it just like,
It wasn't the
yeah,
cancer.
they had told us a year, they had told us, I think in the end of, or like in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, they had told us that his cancer, that the immunotherapy was no longer shrinking or keeping the tumor in his lymph nodes the same. So he had stopped doing the immunotherapy back then, and he was going to a different hospital. He was going to different hospitals. We were taking him to different hospitals to see. They had recommended us to UCLA, and that was like, oh, they were saying that his treatment was gonna be like they were gonna completely give him like shut down his whole system. He was gonna have to be in the hospital, and like it was gonna be really, really aggressive and awful, right? And we didn't want that for him. And then, but luckily he didn't qualify for that. So we started looking at different alternatives, UC Davis. At the end, we ended up at UCSF in San Francisco. But by then it was like, and that doctor was like, well, let's fix your stomach first, right? So in reality, it wasn't even like, he wasn't even concerned about his cancer. He's like, and the treatment that they were going to put him in, he's like, I have really high hopes because they had given him a treatment when he was really bad from his stomach. He's like, oh, you responded really well. He's like, I have faith that you'll be able to be like that. We'll be able to get this under control. But in reality, it wasn't his, like I said, it wasn't his cancer that took him. It was a stomach issue. So my mom had taken him I had actually driven them down here to Tijuana, and I had sent them so we were going to take him to doctors over here in Mexico, in Guadalajara, to see how we can like fix his stomach issue so that way he can work on everything else. But he had stopped really eating, and he had gone, I hadn't realized it, like, but he was getting progressively and progressively more skinnier and skinnier. Like looking back at contrast of photos, like how much weight he truly lost, and he was getting really weak. And that was scaring all of us. Like we had a family meeting when he was trying to do the UCLA treatment. Like my mom didn't want him to do it because and that's when we really found out to the extent like, holy shit, like your cancer's not going away, and then you have a stomach issue and then all this stuff. So that's when we started really realizing, oh, this is serious, right? But in my head, and I guess like, I don't know if it was like rationalizing it or trying to think like, okay, well, we need to fix your stomach issue. It's the stomach, right? This is not even your cancer. It's your stomach. And the doctors over there were like, oh, it's your cancer, it's your cancer. But he didn't have cancer there. It was just like he had like an ulcer. They never treated it, and like that caused all this stuff that for him to like slowly like waste away, I guess you could say, right? And I didn't realize how weak he was. And again, because I was also living apart, I didn't see it every day. So when I took them, I realized, oh, he's really weak. He's not really eating. He hasn't really been eating all these things, right? And then so they went to the hospital. My mom took them, and when they got here, or not here, when they got to Puerto Vallarta, um, they um they were staying with his sister, and then they went to go see this doctor that we wanted to see, that is this cancer specialist, but she does more natural too. And then she's like, no, you're like really bad. Like that's when the first time we ever found out like that he was doing really, like his health was awful, like bad. And we're in the States, and then my mom's in Mexico by herself, and we're like, so they took him from Puerto Vallarta to Guadalajara, which is like a 4 or 5 hour drive via ambulance, I believe. Or they took him in the car, and then they took him, or I know there was an ambulance ride involved, and I don't know if it was that way, one way. The details are iffy of that time, but and then being there, they took him to this cancer hospital there because he has cancer. We're like, but he has the stomach issue, right? Like that's the whole thing. And that was like the day they called, and we're like, I would call my mom, and then she wouldn't also tell me like how bad it was until like we got closer. Like he was there in the hospital for like a week, and then my mom's like, he's doing bad, like you guys need to come. And that was like in the moment that I was like, it was like, holy shit. I was working from home at my apartment, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, she's like, bring me his stuff, like he's not doing good. They said that anything could happen. They're saying that he has no hope. and that you guys should come. So I'm like, okay, like I'm leaving. And then I told my brothers, I told Michael, and Michael hadn't, my brother hadn't been back since we were kids, and I didn't think he was gonna go because he was also going through his own things. He surprised me when he said yes, that he's going. And then I told my sister-in-law because my brother Alex was working, and then he hadn't answered my calls. And I had the girls when I found out. I had my nieces with me, and she had to come pick them up. And I told her, and then she's like, "We're going," And that was, we all drove down to TJ, and we got on the plane, and we saw my dad, and we are like, "You got this, Dad. Like you." I told him I had that relationship with him. I think it was to see him in that hospital there in Mexico. Like the doctors, hospitals in Mexico are very different. Like it's wasn't anything like what he was used to in the States, where private rooms, like the doctors were better or whatever. I'm not saying that the doctors in Mexico aren't good, but I'm just saying it was just different. I wasn't used to that, right? And I think, and I remember telling him, I was like, you got this. You're gonna beat this. I was like, we've done worse, but I didn't know the full thing, right? And then we were only there for like the weekend, like, and he got really happy to see us, all of us, And my brothers went to Mexico after not going for forever. And then, so, but even then we came back, and my mom's like, I'm like, well, what's going on? When are you guys gonna come home? And they just kept telling my mom, like, no, he's not, And my mom's like, well, I don't want him to be here, right, in Mexico. So we were able to get help from a family friend, and we were able to bring him through a helicopter, not helicopter, a medical plane back here, back to Fresno. I And then like in your family, like you always have the main person, like that handles all the stuff, and that person is me. Even I have my mom and stuff like that, but I'm the oldest, so I'm the one that always handled it. So and my mom was just focused being with my dad because my dad always wanted my mom, and so when they brought him back, like he was doing pretty bad, and then they wouldn't let my mom stay, and so my mom was going back and forth from here and to the hospital. And I remember getting a call from the hospice department at Fresno Community, and they're like, "There's nothing else that we can do for your dad but make him comfortable at home." I mean, the people at the hospice department was really nice, but those words, like I remember I was at my parents' house, I think, or honestly I don't remember. It was like multiple calls that I got, right? So um, and I'm the one that arranged everything. I arranged the hospital, the hospice, the deliver my dad to get home because he just wanted to be home. He didn't want to be in hospitals anymore, and he loved our house and being at the property and everything. So I'm the one that kind of helped, like, have to deal with hospice. Um, like it's almost kind of like you're breaking down, but you have to be strong. You're like, so I feel like I went like on autopilot a little bit, like as a survival mechanism, because it's like, okay, let's get this all taken care of. I just want my dad home. So like, and I wouldn't like. It's not that I didn't want people to see me cry, but I just felt like I needed to be strong for everybody. You know. So like when I would go home to my apartment, like with my dog, I would cry on the way home by myself. But those were the moments that I felt like I could let it out, my frustration, and it was like I really thought like my fears and everything. Like I really thought we were gonna beat it. So that for me was really hard to comprehend. I was like, we beat worse. This is something that should be simple if you think, right? So yeah, I dealt with everything. It was like when it was hospice, and then when he was at home, it seemed like he was getting better. But uh, when people are at that stage, sometimes they get really like they get like this burst of energy to be good, right? They're happy, but then they slowly decline and waste away. And that's when like I realized like there was no coming back. When he wouldn't wait, like when he would just want to be sleeping on medication and stuff. That's when um I knew that was that moment where it hit me. Having to deal with the hospice, yeah.
Um, so I believe it wasn't much longer that he stayed with us. Um, if you're okay
Uh-huh.
to share a little bit like the day of hearing the news, or if you were there,
I was there.
how happened?
Yeah. So it was he passed away on April 3rd. It was a Monday. He passed away around 5. Um and around April 1st, or actually April 2nd, the night we had brunch that Sunday. We had brunch at my mom. We always have brunch at our families on Sunday. And we went over and we cooked because my mom was just taking care of my dad. They had Michael and my mom had a really awful night the night before with my dad with his pain level was really bad. And my mom was like, I need to just focus on your dad, right? And then we started having a lot of people come through since the day before, like just to kind of like see him, and everybody wanted to see him. My dad was a person that was very loved by very many, and that night, like I realized he was just steadily declining and declining, like he wasn't getting better. So I just didn't want to leave anymore. So I stayed whole. I stayed at since that night, April 2nd. I never went back to my apartment. I would go obviously to get clothes and stuff, but I spent the night. And throughout the night, he was getting progressively worse. And then I'm the one that had to call hospice to let him know because he had nurses that would go and see him um to kind of like um go and tell him like, hey, this is what's happening, this is what should we do, like because he was like having trouble breathing, and they just told us to give him a double dose of morphine, and he just kind of went to sleep. And we were all there except for my brother Alex that was trying to call me, but he had been like, exhausted. He had been at the house, and like the phone calls weren't even going through. And when he passed, I went to go get my brother. Like I kind of like and I didn't realize that I do this until just recently when my dog passed away. I remember, um, in moments of like great trauma and like stress or something, like I go into like my body automatically like shuts down. Like I cried, but then that's like I kind of like my body's like, no, like put this away for later, you know. And I drove to my brother's house. You would think that I shouldn't, but I did. Or I think, yeah, I drove. My cousin went with me. My cousin Gabby, she went with me. Um, and I got into my brother's house because they still didn't even hear me. And then I told them, and then we brought my brother, and we were all there. And then that day was like a blur. Like so many people, when they found out, like so many people like started coming to my house. I'm like in my brain, I was like, and I'm thankful for it, you know, because they do that. But like so many people showed up, and I'm like, what are people doing here? Like, and it kind of made me like, not in a bad way. Like honestly, like that sounds so awful, but not in a bad way. It's just like they're wanting to be there for you. They don't want you to be alone. And I guess the alternative, if I was alone, I would have been thinking about it. But because I wasn't alone, and I was like kind of like not necessarily catering, but I've always been a hostess. We always have gatherings, and I was kind of like, saying hi. People were talking to us, trying to like be there for us, and and it was like that for almost a month, like of people being around us all the time. So us being alone, um, it wasn't where we had really time to think. It wasn't like,
You just weren't allowed that.
yeah. And then when it came to like planning the funeral, like we all went as a family, but I'm the one that started, like was talking with everybody, handling everything, doing everything, and making the calls and all of that. So that was definitely, it's just when you have something to focus on, you don't think about what's happening. I mean, obviously, yes, I'm crying, yes, all this stuff, but you're also focusing on the external things.
You're distracting your mind with
Yes,
yeah.
and I distracted my mind with work, with a whole bunch of things for like 6 months. Like, and it was the month of October, like the month of his birthday. And I remember I had gone out with my mom, or I had gone out and my mom went to go pick me up. Or no, I'm sorry. I had dinner with my mom. and she was dressed all cute. We had gone to go have dinner and drinks, and I look over at her, and I'm just like, God, she looks so young, and and she misses my dad. My dad was her best friend. He was her first everything. Her, like, they were. She was his. He was her rock, and vice versa. And and likewise, we were. I feel like we were all each other's in our family. We're all each other's rock. But like, I got really close to my parents. I mean, I had always been close to my parents, but
This brought you
cancer
more.
brought
Yeah.
us even closer. And I just like look at her and I'm like, God, she's so young. Like, she lost her soulmate. And to me, that was like where it hit me. And my mom and I talked, and she's like, what's wrong? And I told her, and I just like broke down, and I cried to her the hardest I ever cried. But it's just like, I allowed it to like hit me. And it was a moment of quiet and like totally like, so whatever,
Random.
random. And it just like hit me that he's gone, and that he's not here. Sometimes I guess I could trick my brain into think like, oh, he's at work, like, oh, he's doing this or whatever, but that it really hit me like he's gone.
Um, so it's been around 2 years now, right? I know you guys. Well, now that I'm like kind of in the family, I know you
You
guys
are
did
in
the
the family.
you guys do the misa every year.
Yeah.
And then is there anything else like to show that you guys kind of keep alive for him or like in his honor that you guys do?
We have multiple pictures around him, for him,
Yeah.
of him around the house, everywhere. And we just talk about him, especially me and my mom, or me to people that knew him, or I talk to him. I like, just be like, Daddy, I miss you, or like, Daddy, like, watch over me, like in moments of like that I've been having, personal in my life, right? And I'm just like, I hear his voice. I know what he would say. He was always my biggest cheerleader. He thought like I could walk on water, basically. Like, he thought that I was like the greatest thing, that I could do whatever that I put my mind to. And I've been trying to honor that. It took me a while, but I finally feel like I'm making decisions for myself that he would have been telling me like a long time ago, do it, like, do it. You know what I mean? Like, because he just thought I could do whatever I put my mind to. Um, so it's been that, like, I've been honoring him in the sense of like my dealing with my emotions, I guess, to not allowing myself to go back to that, I guess, automatic robot person that I was, you know, um, and to really do the things do that I want to do with my life before, I went on pause. I felt lost like for a long time after he passed away, because I felt like when he was sick, my purpose was like, hey, let's get him better, right?
Yeah.
So, and then just like it, honestly, like, it's so silly because I know he had cancer, but for us, it was really like sudden that he passed. Like, for me, I thought he was gonna beat this. Like, so for me, it was really like sudden. It was a shock. So I was kind of like, I was in shock for a while, even though I had been doing therapy, um, before it. Like, I think my heart knew what my mind didn't allow me to know. You know what I mean? That, like, I saw it, but I didn't want to see it. You know what I mean? And in therapy, like, therapy helped me a lot. But also, I knew that like it was just a lot of different little things and little messages, and that I feel like signs and stuff like that, like that are kind of like things that I would talk about with my dad or my mom, like presenting itself, like that really have guided me in a sense of like, to see like, he's still, even though I can't see him, I know he's around and looking over me and everything. So I honor him all the time, talking to him. Like, I do talk to him. Like, it's like not out loud in my head.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I'm by myself, I will say it out loud, but I do feel that comfort. Like, I feel that comfort talking to him. Um Listening to the songs he used to like, which was Vicente Fernandez was his favorite. Um little things like being here in Rosarito. He loved being here on the beach. Like he just stuff like that. Just like honoring him everywhere. I think about him daily. There isn't a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about him. And like for the first year after he passed, every third we would do a rosary, and so many people reunited. And now that it's been 2 years, we were like, okay, should we do like a church? Like, cause the first year anniversary we did the misa at our house, and then this time we went to church. But I was like, I don't think people are gonna go. Like in my mind, I was like, I don't think that many people are gonna go. We could do it inside. And like so many people showed up, I was like, oh my god, like you're still like even to like I just didn't realize like I knew how impactful he was for me, and I just wish that he knew how impactful he was to everybody that met him, and they had nothing but good things to say about him.
Your healing journey, have you felt like, I know you mentioned earlier about you started taking therapy.
Uh huh.
Have you felt like, obviously it's something that nobody will ever be fully healed, you know? It's, but have you like felt you have fully accepted it yet? Or how's your healing process, you know, or like your growth
Yeah.
from the day after the funeral? Obviously, your guys' life went from having guests every day to, okay, we have to normalize the new now,
Mhm.
and to today. Like, have you thought you have finally like accepted and like learned to cope with it, or it's still um you try to avoid feeling it? And I know you mentioned like he's at work or stuff.
Mhm.
How do you feel like yourself?
Um, I was very much avoiding it for like the first year, honestly. Like, and then like doing like going out partying, drinking, whatever stuff like that to like kind of not think about it. Even though when you're drinking, it lowers your inhibitions and you think about it. Like you would cry. I would cry, not you would cry. I would cry. In my car and stuff. But like, I, I really do feel like for the first year and a half, like I was very much on autopilot. Even though like I was, and my therapist said like you'll take two steps or you'll take a step forward. Sometimes you'll take three steps back. You know, she's like it's a journey. There's no straight line to healing yourself from grief. And I giving myself that grace, you know, to understand like, okay, because sometimes I would be hard on myself, you know, and I felt really lost. So I was being very destructive, like to myself, in the sense of like just avoiding it, drinking, partying, stuff like that. Um, and but one thing that I feel like kind of woke me up um was like when like my dog passed away, and that was kind of like a really like traumatic thing, you know. But it felt like it was like a shock to my system, like almost I like when somebody's like dying and flatlining and they give them the shock to the paddle. That's what I felt like that was for me, like, and it was kind of like a wake up call in all sense to see like how I've been living my life, how I've been reacting to everything. Because when I was able to see that I shut down, like in that moment, like I went from like hysterically crying to like no emotions. I felt like a serial killer. Like I really truly think about that. I'm like, oh my god, how did I do that? Like, and then I started thinking, I'm like, where have I been doing this? And that's when I've noticed I've done this since since my dad got sick. Like I started doing like if something got too emotional, too crazy, I would just shut down, you know, and I would go robotic or like not my mind like even like sometimes to try to recall like holy like I'm like I know so much stuff happened, but sometimes I forget, like, you know, like your brain is such a powerful thing that it will do anything to have you avoid feeling pain, right? Even if it's destructive tendencies or whatever, or making you forget completely. Because sometimes I'll be like, did that really happen? Like, you know what I mean? Like when like I hear my mom talk about it, and I'm like, oh my god, like yes, it happened. Like yes, we did that. Um, like now I have accepted like through the stuff that we did, the programs, like the classes we took spiritually for our emotions, everything that we did, like I understood like we all make choices before we come here, like we all have like this was meant to happen even though I didn't want it to happen. This was meant to happen. It has a purpose, and you know there is a higher plan, you know what I mean? um So I know that my dad was able to heal his relationship, that he had his issue with his mom, and how he truly healed and was really happy at the end. Like, to see his transformation even at the end, like, it's worth it, you know what I mean? Because he was really truly happy. Um and we lived a really good life. So I feel like, I tell you, I have no regrets. I honestly, I'm yes, I'm 35 now, no kids, all that stuff, right? Or boyfriend, but I I don't have any regrets when it comes to that. And I think that now, like, in a way, he's kind of like pushing me, like, all right, go on your healing journey now, because, like, obviously it wasn't something easy to go through, but it has definitely been
Roller coaster.
a roller coaster, a really big roller coaster. Thank you. I was a loss for words. Um, but I do feel like now, I mean, do I want to accept it? No. But do I accept it? Yes. Do I miss him? Yes. Every day. I miss him some days more than others. Um, and I do still catch myself sometimes going robotic. Not robotic, but just like ignoring it, I guess. But I'm more conscious about it, which I am thankful that I can see that, so I can work on that.
Yeah.
Because when you don't see it and you can't work on it, like, you just continue doing the thing. But um, now I just honestly, like, now I really am doing everything to, like, kind of honor him. Truly, like, because he was always, like I said, my biggest cheerleader. Him and my mom, like, my family in general, like, they're my biggest cheerleaders. Um, always, like, telling me, like, I could do better, or, like, just honestly, like, that I have a really great support system. Um, so it's like working towards my goals now, and, like, that's what I am actually actively doing, is working on what do I want, like, and I'm trying to find myself in the sense of, like, well, what do I want to do now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's my purpose? It's really finding my purpose, like, and that's a little scary, but
It was a big learning experience too,
yeah.
coming from that. Um, so as in the podcast, lots of us are currently, it is live, right? Yeah. I was like, what's that button? Sorry.
No, it's okay.
So there's maybe many people who are currently going through very similar situation as you. Is there any advice you would like to give them, or if they recently got the news where there was nothing that they could really do? What would you like to tell yourself when you received the news, or when you noticed it was coming to the end? You know.
That's a toughie. Like, um, I guess that even though how awful, if it, like, where, like, there is no hope,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it'll be like a similar situation of what you guys went through.
just enjoy every single last minute that you can, with, no matter how painful or whatever. Say everything you want to say to them. I was very open with my dad. My dad and I, we had a very open relationship where we could tell each other everything. So I didn't. He knew how much I loved him, and he's one of my best friends. He really was. So I think just telling them, how much you love them, being there. I think it's just being there, because you'll regret not being there.
Yeah.
You'll regret the things you didn't say, the things you didn't do, and just go through the process, right? Go live the moment, as painful as it could be. You have to live it, because you will live it one way or another, and if you wait longer, it's gonna hurt more, So it's just like, live the process and trust in God. Like, I mean, there is a plan and there is a purpose for everything, you know. And just give yourself grace. Like, there is no um way to grieve. There's no certain way to grieve. There's no certain way to um I guess, like, just get over it. There's no, you'll never get over it.
Yeah.
Honestly, you'll never get over it. The grief will subside, and some days it'll be awful. Some days it'll be worse than others. But that's okay. It's just feeling it, and you feel that way because you loved tremendously. And I guess it's not to be, don't be afraid to love, and, like, love them fully, and just say everything and be there. Say everything you want to say, because if you don't say what you want to say, then live with regrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like, I know you mentioned how, like, you could hear your dad's voice in you. What would you think that your dad would tell someone who just received the news that their life has not been given up on, but, they have kind of to prepare themselves for the end? That you think that
Yeah,
he would tell someone?
they told my dad that he wasn't gonna make it past 2 years. He made it 12. He went 10 years ahead, and it really is because he maintained positive, and he never accepted what the doctors told him. He just kept living his life like, no, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, and he kept working on himself. So in reality, it's just, I guess, in a sense, like, to stay positive, even though if it looks bleak, if it looks awful, and all that, because in reality, my dad didn't die because of his cancer. He died because of the cancer treatments. Yeah. And that's what they won't tell you. Yeah. And that's honestly one thing that I learned. It's like he died from the side effects, right? So, um, if it wasn't for that, if I feel like if the doctors would have been honest and been like, let's fix this, then we could get you on another treatment. Like, I feel like his doctor at the end really gave up on him, to be honest. But I feel like we would have been able to fix that. Like, he would have still been here with us. But like I said, everything, there's a grand plan and there's a great, like, to life. And I know that this was meant to happen, even though I don't want to accept it, right? I mean, I accept it, right? Um, so in reality, I think that my dad would just say, stay positive, and like, you determine what happens to you, right? Like, you're the one that makes the decisions. You're the one that can, like, our mind and our body is so amazing that it could help us push us forward. Like, like my dad, like I said, he lived 10 more years as opposed to the 2 years that they gave him. And that was all because his will and his willingness to change, to stay positive, and to work on himself.
Well, thank you very much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us and for being able to share your story. I know it hasn't been that long and it's still hard on you, but it really motivates other people, or at least let them know they're not fighting their journey alone, or what they're feeling is not no one has ever felt before. They have someone to kind of look after, or like kind of, okay, she did it, I could too. The inspiring moment. So before we end today's live, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And as mentioned, this will be kept here for 30 days and then downloaded and posted on our YouTube, and then also our nonprofit Facebook account, which I'll share as well. Just little announcements. Next month, we will be starting with a cancer survivor and going from there with other siblings and a wife of a cancer patient as well. So, yeah, keep supporting and keep joining us, and we really, really appreciate allowing us to give um, family members the voice to share our journey, because cancer isn't just a journey of the patient, but it's the whole family. And it's so beautiful that we are given this platform, and also you guys are allowing us to share that and bring awareness to it. So thank you very much, and enjoy your rest of your day.